This is the first tutorial in the series of tutorials on PHP, and in this tutorial we are going to talk a bit about PHP, the programming language. We're going to check out some of its features, and then we're going to have a look at something called the request response cycle. And in the next tutorial we are going to check out installation instructions to the software that we need to install in our systems to code in PHP and also test PHP code. And then from the third tutorial onwards we're going to check out the fundamentals of the programming language in detail. So PHP is a server-side scripting language, and it was created in the year 1994 by someone called Rasmus Ladorf. And the guy wanted to make a language to maintain his blog, his personal homepage. So that's what PHP initially stood for. The acronym PHP stood for personal homepage. Now it stands for something like pre-hypertext preprocessor or something like that, and you don't have to worry about the full form. But what you need to understand is that PHP was designed to make websites, and that's what it is most popularly used for these days. You can also make desktop applications in PHP, and it's a very effective language for that purpose too. But people mostly use PHP to create websites. And if you want to become a web developer and work with the content management systems such as Joomla or Drupal, then it's very important for you to understand the basics of PHP. You get the basics in place, and then from there you can build on using any of those content management systems. And if I'm not wrong, I think even WordPress uses PHP in the backend. So there are a lot of other websites that have been built in PHP, like Facebook, and I'm sure Yahoo also has a lot of it built in PHP. And it's a very popular language, and the syntax of PHP is similar to the syntax of Perl and Java. So if you've programmed in any of those languages before, then it's going to be very easy for you to pick up PHP code. And even if you haven't programmed in those languages, it's totally cool. We're going to start from scratch, and we're going to be really slow in the beginning, and later on towards the end of the course we're going to check out some advanced concepts too, and we're going to pick up pace there. So now let's talk about something called the request response cycle. So this is what the request response cycle for PHP looks like. You have a client, which is your browser, and it could be any browser, Firefox or Google Chrome or Internet Explorer, doesn't matter. And then you have something called a server. So the server is the place where all the web pages are stored, and the client requests the server for web pages, and the server responds with the required web pages. And the client unfortunately cannot understand PHP. It can understand simple stuff like HTML and CSS, or maybe some client-side scripting languages like JavaScript, but it cannot understand PHP. So if a client requests for a page, and if there is some PHP code in it, then the server has to first translate that PHP code or parse that PHP code, and it has to send HTML output to the client so that the client can understand and display it, right? And that's why the server is called the PHP guy. And optionally, the server also interacts with the database. If it is required, then some information is stored to the database, and some information is fetched back from the database, and the web pages are populated and sent to the client. And in this course we are going to use Apache as the web server. We are going to use MySQL as a database, and the browser, as I said, could be any. And also the platform on which the browser is installed could be any. So if you are watching this tutorial on Linux, you can install the AMP structure, that is MySQL, PHP, and Apache MySQL, and PHP in that sequence. On Linux you can install it. On Windows you can also install it. On Mac, but I am using Windows currently, so I'm going to discuss the installation instructions to install the VAMP stack, which is Windows, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. And although this entire thing happens at different places, so you have the client at your end, and then there is a server which could be any at any place. I mean, you could be accessing a web page from China, and the server could be in US. So the translation of PHP code happens in US, and you see the output of it in China. But in this course we'll have to create this entire framework on our systems, so that we can develop PHP code locally. And what I mean by that is we're going to have the client on our machine, and also we're going to have the server on our machine, and that's why we're going to install Apache. It's going to do that job for us. And we're also going to install the database software MySQL, right? So some of the most important features of PHP are that PHP, as I said, is a cross-platform language. So whether you're developing or deploying your code on Windows or on Linux or on Mac, it doesn't matter. Your code is going to work just the same. And the other good thing about PHP is that it's a very popular language, and it has a very active developer community. So there is a lot of support available for PHP. And if there is something you want to find out about, then let's say you want to know about string functions in PHP, just make a Google search for it, and you can go to the documentation on PHP's website, and it's fairly comprehensive. And if you have doubts, you can ask people on discussion forums. And as I said, it's a very popular language, so there are a lot of people who have knowledge about PHP, and that's why it's very easy to learn the language. And it's also a fun experience, just understanding the features of the language. So that's it for this tutorial. I'm going to see you in the next one, in which we are going to check out the installation instructions to install the WAMP stack. And I hope you guys had fun watching this tutorial. I'll see you next one. Till then, take care.